Welcome back to the show. MDV and I, we are joined by Adam Allred now. Adam, we've been trying to get on the show for a couple of weeks now. I am super fired up. You just got back from Panama. You're an entrepreneur. You're a husband. You're a father. And you're on a mission to help make men great again, which I want to talk about that. And as of recently, I saw online because I started seeing some of your content a while ago, and I was very intrigued by it, right? It's definitely in line with a lot of the same things that I'm doing. I'm using more of like fitness in these workouts and stuff, but I got captivated by the message, right? And I think you're very articulate. I actually want to know how you do some of these social media things, if you're using like a teleprompter or something, because they're immaculate. They're awesome. Recently, dude, recently you got in a little bit of a, for lack of a better term, online beef about the Bible, which I do want to talk about a little bit. It's not, I don't want to call it online beef, but it's like, it's a discussion. But dude, welcome to the show. Welcome back to the great state, great country, the United States from Panama. And thanks for being here.
I'm glad to be back at both. It's good to be back home in the States, and it's good to finally get this this conversation going. We've been trying for a couple of weeks.
Technology almost thwarted us twice. Almost got the best of us twice. It almost got the best of us.
We showed you.
So.
Yeah. So, Adam, I think a great place to start is that, and I've seen these hats that you make, sell, or wear, whatever. There's just about making men great again. And I think that when you talk about that, there's a lot of ways you can go, right? There's so many angles and so many concepts behind it. But I guess from what you're doing, coming from your background, which I also think is really interesting, the way you've been in like non-alternative, like a lot of the people we talk to are in tech world, this and that, but you came from more of a different type of sales background, which I want to talk about. But what does it mean to make men great again in particular? Like when you wear that hat, what are you actually trying to tell somebody?
Yeah, I feel like every single societal ill that we have right now is stemming somewhere from masculinity having been weakened. Like it is the root of all of our problems. And I grew up not really, I grew up with a really strong family. I grew up, very religiously active, very active in my community. And so much of the programming of the framework that I had been handed on how to act as a man by well-intended sources like family or church or whatever just didn't work. And, I kept playing the script. I'm doing everything right. Why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? I'm checking off the boxes. I'm doing what everybody's told me to do. And it's just not working. And it took me going through a really rough first marriage and then a really, really rough divorce to start waking up to a lot of these things. But when I went through that, when I was going through this process, this marriage and then the subsequent divorce, I had so many guys start reaching out to me, friends of mine or friends of friends that were reaching out saying, hey, I'm in this marriage. It's terrible. I don't know what to do. Totally getting their asses kicked by life. And so they're asking me questions like I have the answers and I'm trying to figure it out myself, but they're just seeing a guy go through a divorce and they want to know what it's like on the other side. And I realize there's just so many men that don't have any idea how to function effectively in society in a myriad of different ways. And so I just started making some content on social media. I just tried to share some thoughts of things I was learning as I was going through the process. I don't consider myself like an expert. I don't consider myself some sort of guru. I'm just a dude like everybody else going through life. And you start picking some of these things up and you start trying to share it. And it used to be this information got, disseminated through the tribe. Like you had the elders of the tribe and you had the young men and they would sit around the fires at night and they'd pass on knowledge and wisdom on how to be a man, how to stay alive, how to keep your tribe alive, etc. But we've lost so much of that in this modern world, especially with the removal of masculinity from the traditional home, with either single mothers doing most of the raising of kids or, fathers that are bystanders in the home, but not really doing hands-on coaching and mentoring of their children. So I just think it's a huge issue right now. And that's what it means to me to make men great again, is to remind ourselves of who we ought to be, like who our women and our children need us to be and who we need to be for ourselves to be able to show up effectively in this life and make this world a better place for us having been in it.
Adam, you said growing up, you had good examples or not good examples of masculinity in your household. I missed that part. Did you say it was a strong example of masculinity growing up? You had a good example of that. Can you explain a little bit about like what made it a good example for you and where did you grow up?
Yeah. So my old man was in the service. I grew up all over the world. He did 30 years in the Air Force, and no, my dad he was an all-star. I wasn't very close to him growing up. We just had like we butted heads. I was his first kid. I was super rebellious. He was kind of super like kind of dominating, and we had this bad friction between us. So I wasn't really close, and I didn't get like a ton of coaching from my dad or like sitting down mentoring, but I saw that man walk out his front door every day to take care of his family. I saw him work hard. And he never complained. He's never felt sorry for himself. He showed up, he took care of his responsibilities. He was a good father, and I can't overstate how much of an impact that has had on me and my outlook and what I want to be like. He's definitely a mentor of mine to look at my father, how he's lived his life. But as far as getting coaching, as far as someone sitting down and being like, son, this is what women are like. Son, this is what the world is like. Son, when you're picking a career, this, I didn't really have a lot of that. I think
Yeah.
that's absent for most men. I'm not saying that to feel sorry for myself. It's just an observation of how have we gotten to this point? And, like, I'm just like, I didn't have any coaching. And the coaching that I did get, let's say from church, was like just the absolute worst way to function as a man. Like, I really feel like mainstream Christianity in the church I grew up Orthodox Mormon. The Christian church is in the business of neutering men in a lot of ways.
Mm.
Like, it tries to convince men that they need to be tolerant and sweet and harmless, and that Jesus was this sort of pacifist that tolerated everything and loved everybody, and just say Jesus to any question that you're asked and you're going to be saved, sort of thing. And I think we've really seen the church get watered down for a lot of different reasons, but I think it's a lot more feminized now, and there's not really a place for men at church. And when they do show up and participate, they're getting this messaging that they're supposed to be weak, but they're being told that this weakness is strength. You're strong for being harmless, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Have you
Go,
go ahead,
Jason.
MD. Have you heard of the I'm going to go to the have you heard of the Church of 1122, Adam?
I haven't.
Okay. So the gentleman, he's currently doing like a 4-part series on stand firm and act like a man and act like men. And I thought it was pretty kind of antithesis of what you're referring to. Like, obviously every church has there's so many different ways you could take this conversation, but I'm just saying in particular, he's doing a 4-part series of like how the Bible tells you to act like a man and what it means to take responsibility in this. And I've found it particularly eye-opening in the way that he discusses it. But I wonder if I don't know if it was just your dad or if it was just MDV's dad, Matt's dad, or if it was my dad. But I do think that the generations when we were growing up, I don't know if there was it just wasn't as common for like the coaching aspect to come into place, at least not, in our house. Like my dad came from Iran, right? And so he's the man. My dad's the best. He's awesome. But it really wasn't that same way that you're referring to either. And I think do you think that's just something that now it's becoming more popularized for us? Because like I try and take an initial react, like I try and like actively coach my son in like things that I'm thinking about, the ways that I'm approaching things. In particular, like he loves business, so I'm trying to talk through certain things and like, but I'm looking at the lens of like, how do I develop versus, do you think that's just like a newer thing, or you think that just some people had it, some people didn't? I mean, because I'm wondering where we're going to take this, right? And I agree fully with you that back in the day, these tribes, I think we have a few problems. One is that there's no like anointing of when a boy becomes a man. I think that there is something there, like I was in Africa, and it was very, very common for that process, and we don't have that here.
Mhm.
And then another thing is we're missing out on connecting men and sharing these practices, and so that's one of the reasons why we're doing these men's clubs. But I guess I don't know. I'm kind of going around here saying like, do you think it was just like our parents' generation, or do you think it's just I don't know?
Yeah, I think so. I think society used to have, to your point earlier about having these kind of baked into society rites of passage for boys to become men. That was much more prevalent than it was now, whether that was sports or military service or some sort of organization, the kids, Boy Scouts, whatever it was. There was a process in society to help level boys up and help them turn into men. And so I think it was probably easier, this is my speculation, for my father or parents to not feel like they needed to be as hands-on because the
Mm.
world wasn't as far off the rails. There was a lot of stuff baked into society to help with the process, and you could kind of trust when your kids went out the front door or went to school that they were going to be in responsible hands and being taught things that were helpful. They'd come from the greatest generation before that, that had really formed a lot of the culture in America and the framework for how we function as a society. And so I think they just kind of were riding on the coattails a little bit of that. There wasn't as big of a need, perhaps at least in their minds, as there is today now, where it's like, dude, if you're not watching your kids, if you're not communicating with them, if you're not coaching them, the world is, and it's going to be not the outcome you're looking for, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about because you brought up, the greatest generation, and commonly that's referred to the generation that grew up prior to World War II and then served in World War II. And those people grew up in a very hard time. You're talking the World War I, Great Depression era. Things were hard. And that generation after that, life got a little bit easier for them, through the 70s and the baby boomer era, obviously. And I think we're kind of reaching a point where, although life is kind of very easy, and I think it's created a lot of soft men, like you're highlighting, like the ease of being able to basically live without having to ever encounter any sort of adversity is for a lot of people maybe part of the reason why there's this softening. But now you're seeing some other things happen in society where men are realizing that there's a lot of danger out there, maybe masked through different types of technology or masked through different things that didn't exist 30, 40, 50 years ago now, that are risks for men. You can very easily fall into these traps. And I think like we're now seeing men kind of understand that and guiding and coaching their kids away from that. But I was kind of thinking about the question, like, how did we get here? How did we get to this place where we have such a problem with masculinity, Adam? And I wanted to ask your opinion, like, what are the root causes? I know that it's a complex issue and there's a lot of multifactorial things going on, but if you had to identify, like, what would be the root cause of how we got here? Would it be related to kind of the softening overall of society, or is it something different?
Yeah, I think it's really like too significant. It is very complex, and I'm just going to give my best stab at it. I've read a lot up on this, and I think, you got boys that are growing up in homes where the father has been pushed out of the home by this type of mentality, this type of toxicity, or he's abandoned the home. He's not there showing up anymore, or he's there and he's been neutered into a bystander. And so he's just kind of observing the mother do most of the parenting because he keeps getting told his whole life that what he does is toxic and that masculinity is bad. And so men are like a lot of men have been cowed into silence or been cowed into this state of like being spectators instead of playing an active role in their lives and the lives of their families because of a lot of this toxic mentality. And the interesting thing is nobody's happier for it. Women are not happier for it. Men certainly aren't happier for it. It's not a healthy play direction for us to go. And this hasn't made anybody's lives better. It's just made everything worse. But I think first and foremost, this attack on masculinity that I don't think was some expression of human conscious evolution, but has been coerced and manipulated for political reasons by very powerful institutions to create a division and divisiveness amongst the population, us. The other issue too is I think because we live in a society that is been built by strong men. Masculine men have built the streets, they've built the buildings, they've built the cars, we've built this whole infrastructure that gives us this type of comfort and ease and prosperity that nobody in the history of the world has ever seen before.
Mm.
There's kinda like not a place at the table for masculine men in that. There's something like, "Well, you guys did your job, you fought the wars, you built the streets, you know, and now we're safe," which is not accurate. You need masculine men still to do all of these things, but there's sort of this sense of now they're disposable. "Thanks for your time here, thanks for showing up, but we as a society have moved past masculinity. We don't need you. Never mind, we're standing on the shoulders of masculine men who have created the safe space for women to get on their phone and tweet, 'I don't need no man.' The only reason you can do that is because a man created a world that you could be safe in." And I'm not saying this is an attack on women, but just a recognition of how valuable and important the role of masculine men are in society. So I think it's
Mm.
those two factors in my mind is the rise of feminism, and then this rise of comfort and ease and prosperity that was built by masculinity that has created this place where we feel like masculinity is no longer needed.
Well, you certainly are. Thank you for articulating your position on those. And if I were to say that if we wanted to erode any sort of cohesiveness in a country, no matter where you're coming from, you would certainly start by attacking the societal norms, the family units, and then you would want to see that be disruptive to create divisiveness. So as a tactic, it does make a lot of sense that could be something that communist supporters at the time or whoever were trying to do to disrupt the United States or to take it off path. And then the second thing that you highlighted is that like common axiom that we all see is that like hard times demand strong men or create hard men, but really good times and times where there's a lot of prosperity oftentimes lead to a softening. And those two factors, it does make a lot of sense when you think about it from that way. What are you doing right now? Like if you were to try to solve this problem that you see out there, and I know that you have, is it pronounced Doughboy Nation or DG Doughboy Nation? Doughboy Nation. What would you say is your mission here to bring that around? Like what tactics are you using to bring back strong men?
That's a good question, man. I'm trying to figure all that out as we go. What is the best approach
Yeah, me too.
to this?
Yeah, all of us.
Again, I'm not like the expert at anything, man. I'm just going through this, trying to figure stuff out like everybody else. But I think first and foremost, it starts with us men gathering back together in tribes. That's where masculinity is forged. Good women do not make good men. And I get so tired of hearing that. That's not how this works. Good men make good men. Good women multiply good men. They will make a man way better than he was left on his own. But a man is made fundamentally or idealistically with his father, a father teaching his son how to be a man, and then brought her into a community where you have older men that are respectable and that are good men that are part of this process of raising the next generation, these tribes. But in our complex world, we've been isolated. We're operating on phones and technology, and so many men, when polled, tell you they don't have any close friends. So I think it first starts with us getting back into tribes, and that's what Doughboy is. Doughboy is a tribe where men can come together. We do a lot of coaching on the different articles or aspects of being a man. But a lot of it is just about being in a community where guys can share the journey they're on and have other guys listen to them and be there for them, not in a sappy sort of let's sob our eyes out sort of way, but like, yo, bro, we got your back, man. What are you going through? I can relate to that. I've been going through this too. And we can share our war stories with each other. We can level each other up. We call each other out. Bro, you sound like you're making a lot of excuses right now. Or, gas each other up when the guy's feeling down. Creating this sense of community that you got a brotherhood around you that actually care about you. It's the iron sharpens iron sort of mindset. And I think once you have that community to really start affecting change, then you need some strategy. So it's like, okay, we've got a group of brothers now, we've got a tribe. What's the strategy to get guys leveling up? Because historically, that's what tribes always had to do. You had to level up your tribe because the tribe was only as strong as the weakest link. And so you put together a strategy. What are we going to go through? What process? What curriculum are we trained on? And then you bake in some accountability with that, number 3, and you'll actually start seeing guys moving the needles in their life. They'll start leveling up. They'll have a community of guys they can rely on, they can lean into. They're going to have a strategy and an idea, concept of what is their purpose. Most of these guys don't even know what their purpose is. You sit down and ask a man, what's your purpose? And 9 out of 10 times, you're going to have somebody that just kind of gets a glazed over look. Some guy's like, I don't know, man. I guess I've never really thought about it. So getting together in these tribes, what is your purpose as a man, which I think is universal. It's the same purpose for everybody. And then it's like, okay, let's hold each other accountable to this purpose-driven strategy that we have in community to work on and be better. And I think it starts there. And when I came out of my divorce and went into this, started getting into the social media space where we're sharing this, I'm talking to my friends and stuff about these types of concepts. And nobody's talking like this, right? Like, it's like novel to guys that I'm sharing this stuff with. It was novel to me. Yeah, it's like, stuff that I just never heard anybody ever teach me in school or in family or in church or anything like this. I'm trying to share with these guys things I'm learning in real time. It was super novel sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that?
I'll jump in here on a piece here, Adam. I love the way you answered MDV's question because, dude, you're not trying to be a guru about it, and frankly, neither am I. Right? Like, dude, what I'm trying to do is connect men in a parking lot over a workout, and then grab coffee, and we're trying to do that across the world, and we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it, and we're gonna do it in a big way. And you hit the nail on the head for me. I'm so glad that MDV asked that question because You're saying, dude, bring a group of guys together like a tribe, give some basic principles because at the end of the day, right? Like, the tribe's only as good as its weakest link, and naturally it will gravitate towards what that is and try and lift it up, right? If you're thinking like old school tribe, right? You need everybody on to level up. And then hold each other accountable to get there. But it's like, what is the answer? Is it this secret sauce, this secret sauce? Who knows? But it's when you bring a group of guys together, naturally, this kind of conversation will occur and it will lift like a rising tide raises all the boats. It's just going to happen. Is it because of this piece or this piece? Who cares? We're just going up. So that was a really interesting nugget. And I really appreciate that, Adam, because I think any guy listening, you know, when I think about masculinity, and I think that there's a lot of, in my own ecosystem, I'm surrounded by a lot of incredible, incredible men, like incredible men. And I'm blessed that my son is around incredible men. But I think that if you're out there anywhere in the world and you're not n- engaging on a regular basis with a group of men, you're missing out on what you could possibly be if you did. And I think that's a great place to start. So thank you. I didn't mean to cut you off, but that was like really eye opening for me because like you weren't giving like a specific thing. You're just saying, dude, getting around a group of guys and you don't know what you don't know.
Well, that stuff kind of sorts itself out, like you said earlier. You mentioned earlier, it kind of
I don't know
sorts
if
itself out
is
naturally. Guys get around and you start figuring out what's important to talk about, what angles you're going to go in these conversations. You start putting together some ideas. What I was going to say though, right before where I lost my train of thought, is that I kind of felt like I was an island sharing this stuff, and something that's giving me a lot of hope and encouragement for the future is that when I started posting this stuff in social media, I realized how many other men are on the same track. Like, this is weighing on the minds of a lot of men. There's a lot of other guys saying very similar things. There's a lot of other guys that are forming communities and tribes. It's like instinctual. I feel like this is something inspired from God, that we need to start doing this. This is how we're going to recover society. This is how we're going to turn the tide. Is going to be in these tribes. And a tribe, this is so important for men to understand. It's also important for women to understand this who are in relationships with men. A tribe for a man is far more important than anything that he's going to ever get out of therapy, in my opinion. I'm not saying there's not a place for therapy, and if you get a good therapist, they can do wonders. That's kind of not necessarily an easy thing to do, to find a great therapist, but you need somebody to talk to. But when you get into a tribe with brothers, you feel like you're part of a community, and you feel like there's guys that actually care about you. And one of the things that, we do in tribes is we kind of pick at each other. We're very different than women. So women get in their tribes and they just validate each other all day long. They're just like, "You're okay. We're okay. You're beautiful, girl." They'll like, my wife is like the most authentic person I know, but she gets around her girlfriends and they just constantly say things back and forth to each other they don't believe, but they're trying to make each other feel good and feel safe and feel secure. So, and she'll tell me afterwards these conversations, and it's like, that's the mindset of females, that they're driven by safety. They're looking for safety and security, and they find that in their friend group. Men, we're looking to evolve. So when you're in a tribe with men, you're looking for that weakest link. You're looking for those insecurities, and we kind of pick on each other and we talk shit to each other. That's actually a healthy thing when it's done. When you don't cross over into a place of being disrespectful or being like trying to kick somebody while they're down, but calling each other out is actually super healthy, and it's also super therapeutic. Because one of the things that I've noticed over the years, I've always had really, really good friends that I've been surrounded by, guys that are like way better than me at everything in life, guys that I look up to. But when you have an insecurity as a man and it gets brought out in your tribe, it stops being an insecurity. You get roasted over it, guys talk crap, but it gets brought out into the air. And so instead of you trying to hide this thing that you're embarrassed about or worried about or thinking you're the only one that feels this way or has done something like this, now you're like, all these other guys have done the same thing, felt the same way, or they're calling you out, and you get it out in the open. And now it can actually, like, it doesn't have to be an insecurity anymore. Jocko Willink said this once. He said, when we try to hide our insecurities, everybody sees them. When we don't care about our insecurities, no one else cares either. And so if you can bring it out in your tribe, you can get out a lot of the stuff that guys consider as trauma or shame or things from their past or whatever. You get them out there, you flesh it out, and then you move on, and everybody still likes each other. And that's like some of the best therapy for getting your shit together, is, man, figuring out your identity, getting rid of shame, getting rid of trauma, is in that tribe where guys are calling you out and you're talking about it and you're getting it on the table. And then it's like, okay, we handled that, moving on.
Man.
I do think that is something that is accurate when you gather men together and you put them into community, team, tribe, that you do see the pecking order form, but you also see people lifting each other up through that, calling each other out, testing one another, lifting each other up. But you mentioned it earlier, like it is true that like you're only as good as the weakest members of the team or that tribe. And what might seem, abrasive or harsh on the surface as an onlooker or somebody who doesn't understand what that's like, it actually can be very helpful when done in the right ways to uplift those men or to get those insecurities out there or to help them find the strength to level up. And it's certainly something I think through, obviously COVID did some really crazy things. One of the things that it did was created a tremendous amount of isolationism and has put people into a place where creating community, finding community, and building community doesn't happen. And because of that, you don't see things like the leveling up that you would have through team and tribe.
Mm.
Yeah, bingo, man. I mean, you hit the nail on the head.
I have a question here, Jay. You mind if I ask? Because Adam, you're very forthcoming with your opinions. I love it. I do really like somebody who can stand behind their convictions. It's not surprising to me that you might have had an online beef with somebody. So I do want to hear about what the Bible beef was about, because that's really interesting.
Well,
Did you have a?
yeah, I mean, Adam, so in the Bible, I'm like basically almost done from reading it from cover to cover. I'm like, I'm just finishing some letters from Paul. I mean, I'm like right at the end. And as you're going through, right, the Bible is very specific about like being mindful of, Pharisees and people who, claim to know. You went out and you said some things about the Bible that I think some other people had a difference of opinion on. I'll let you speak to it because I'm going to butcher it. So, like, it seems like you're very faith driven, and I guess a good way to kind of lead into this question is, if a man is out there right now and they're looking for purpose, and you say, "What is your purpose?" and it's like, "Well, I have my family, and I want to go impact people through my work, and I want whatever." Would you say that every man needs to have some layer of faith in their life based on what you've experienced through Doughboy and just throughout life? Do you feel like every man has to have a layer of that, or do you think it's something that people can go without? I'm curious.
No, I think faith is the foundation for everything that moves a man in his life. My definition of faith is going to be different than Orthodox Christianity's definition of faith, and I think my definition is closer to what Jesus was trying to teach in the scriptures, and that faith is work. That's what it means to have faith. So when Jesus says, "Hey, if you have the faith of a grain of a mustard seed, you can move a mountain," I don't think he's saying that you can pray hard enough and think it enough and then, use the force and the mountain's going to move. What I think he's saying is that if you have enough faith to move a mountain, you're going to get to work and you're going to start shoveling and you're going to dig one wheelbarrow load of dirt at a time. And it's going to look like you're not doing anything. You're not moving anything. And you're going to exercise this faith to keep moving and keep progressing. And eventually you're going to start seeing you moved a lot of earth. And then you're going to start seeing, hey, man, this is starting to look like a mountain. And then eventually you've moved a mountain. To me, that's what faith is. Faith is the process by which we commit ourselves to things that we can't see, like the outcome of a particular line that we're working in. We don't get to see the outcome. We can hope for it, we can visualize it, but we don't see it until we put in that work.
Yeah.
And that's true also with God. God is, to me, what God is for everybody, essentially, is the most idealistic version of yourself. Everybody's projecting their own idea on God, or they're taking the projections of other people's ideas on God, whether they've read them in some scriptures or they listened to a pastor or got it from their family or whatever. Everybody's kind of projecting what God is. And the interesting thing is, if you sit down with people in the same Sunday school lessons, in the same church service, everybody sitting in the same pews is going to have a different idea of who God is. They're all going to have a different relationship with him. And so to me, the divine is thinking, what is the best version of myself, essentially? Like, what would God, if God could make me into the best version, what would that be? And then getting to work and working towards that. And that's working towards the divinity that is within you, becoming the best version of yourself. Now, I do believe in God. I read my Bible. I've read it my whole life. I read it all day. I read it every day. Um, and I believe God is calling us to this. I think the God's purpose for us being in this life is in Christian theology, most of Christian theology, the idea is, or the dogma is that the purpose of life is to come to know Jesus. And then once you do that, you've kind of arrived. You got Jesus in your heart. Now you're saved, and everything else after that's sort of like icing on the cake. And I'm really dumbing this down and generalizing a lot of this. I understand that not everybody feels this way. I'm just kind of like my perception of like the mainstream kind of Christianity is like come to know Jesus. But that's always been really interesting to me that we believe that, because the vast majority of humans that have ever walked on this planet have never heard the name Jesus before in their life. So there's got to be more to this life than just getting to the name Jesus. And to me, the purpose of a man is to be the best version of himself, to literally follow what Christ taught, which, in the Sermon on the Mount, he goes through these different attributes that need to be developed and built on humility and honesty and charity. And he goes through these different things like, this is how you become the perfect man. And then at the end of this, like this just brilliant like description of how to be the best man you can be, he says something really important. He says right on the cut, he says right at the close to the end of that, he says, and then you got to learn to love your enemies. And he's like, once you've done that, you're kind of on this path to progression or perfection. And that's his final statement after saying, once you can learn to love your enemies, then you can be therefore perfect, even as your Father, which is in heaven, is perfect. So to me, there's a lot more that Christ is teaching than just saying, have faith on my name, and that's kind of it. Christ is saying, literally, go level up. Go be the best version of yourself. The woman caught in adultery, they want to stone her, and he says, he without sin, ye without sin cast the first stone, and they're all shamed and they wander off. And then he says to her, where are thine accusers? And she says, there are none. And he says, neither do I accuse thee, neither do I condemn thee. But then he says something really important. He says, go and sin no more, go level up. So there's something in this process of life about developing ourselves into a better version of who we are. And I think that's really, to me, what faith means when I talk about that in a scriptural sense or in a general sense. It's about getting to work and becoming the best, most powerful, vibrant, successful, charitable, sympathetic version of ourselves that we possibly can be.
I like how you said, when you first started out talking, you talked about faith being work, and you finished there as well. You also talked about faith being a lot about wonder and uncertainty. And I think one of the things that, I kind of struggle with when I talk to some people who are, ultimately very religious, is that like, it seems like a lot of their faith is based on certainty. And, I really appreciate that, because it's very difficult for me to understand that. And maybe that's part of my own journey with this, but the idea that faith is more about wonder and work makes a lot of sense to me. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Well, and that's my lens with when I read the scriptures, and I appreciate you saying that as well. My lens with reading the scriptures is I try to make what I'm reading as universal to the human experience as possible, because I don't think there's any special kids on the bus. This is going to defy most of Christianity and most of any other religion, who everybody thinks they're God's chosen and they're the best, his kind of favorite kids down here on the bus. I don't really think God has any favorite kids. I think he loves all of us equally, and all of the life experiences that we're having down here are profoundly important to each one of us and how they evolve us and shape us and the perspectives and paradigms that they give us. And so when I'm reading Jesus, I'm trying to read, how does this kind of apply to everybody? And I think, to your point, and this is kind of part of the beef I got into with, it's not really a beef, but this little back and forth with Wesley Huff, is that I believe that certainty is the opposite of faith. I think certainty, a theological certainty, is actually spiritual death. And that's when you get into the realm of the Pharisees, is when people think they're learned and they think they've learned all this information, and now they think they are the ones to speak on behalf of God to everybody else and tell everybody else what to do, this sort of middle management thing that comes in with religion. And it's interesting to note that, the only people that Christ had any condemnation for in his mortal ministry were the religious, those who claimed to know him, those who claimed to speak for him. And it was those that ended up killing him in his own name, like in the name of Jehovah, we're killing Jesus, right? Like to save the people from spiritual destruction, we've got to kill this guy. It was the religious that did that. And so I'm not saying everybody who's religious is like that. That's certainly not the case. There's a lot of beautiful, vibrant, religious people. I'm surrounded by them. I still go to church. I still consider myself somewhat religious, but that's a really slippery slope to get on. And as soon as you start outsourcing your thinking to a pastor or even to a book in the Bible, you're starting to miss the mark. Like Christ literally reminded us, hey, come to me, work it out with me directly. I think the Bible is an intensely powerful tool, but at the end of the day, it was written by men. God didn't write a single page in that book. And so you're getting other people's experiences with the divine that is getting filtered through biases and cultural lenses and is getting filtered through very imperfect, through fear or through agenda or whatever else to write down these words that we have. And that doesn't mean we dismiss them. Again, I read the Bible every day. It's the most important book in my life. But I don't want to get caught up worshiping this thing that I think misses the mark when we should be going directly to God. We should be having these types of conversations and meditations and prayers with the Almighty. And what comes from God to our soul, to our hearts, when we can learn to tune into that frequency, that radio channel, it's like a frequency. When we can tune into that and you start to connect with that divine experience and there's that exchange of information, that is the truth in our life. That is what's far more important to us than what the pastor said or what Paul wrote to the Corinthians. And I'm not trying to take anything away from that. There's a lot of inspired people out there that can share really inspired stuff with us. But to hang our hat on that, like that's the word of God and the end all to the discussion, to me, it's not only non-scriptural to me anyways, as I read Christ, but it's also super irrational.
I think, the best thing that I've learned over the last couple of years, really diving into this, is the idea of a relationship. And I think the way you're talking about, right, is when you really are looking into like this like you're creating a relationship with God. I think that ultimately is like my goal. My goal is to create a relationship, and I read the Bible as a tool to help me get there. That's the way I think about it. And of course, as I'm reading the Bible, I'm trying to learn more, I'm trying to develop. And I think that there's never going to be any end state to this. Like, I'm going to continue to learn for the rest of my life. And I'm going to continue to work on this relationship the rest of my life, just like I am in every other relationship in my life. I'm going to try and get better and better and better and have a closer relationship, closer, closer, closer. That's the way I kind of envision it. And I think you're kind of alluding to that in the way that you look at it. I imagine that's kind of similar to the way you look at it. So.
Yeah, very, very similar. That's exactly how I feel. Like the Bible's a very powerful tool, but it's not the source. The source is God.
Yeah, and you can see some of these issues. I think you're hinting at like fundamentalism a little bit, where once you start to believe things fundamentally, discourse, whether it's with God or with other people, if you're talking about religious fundamentalism or you're talking about political fundamentalism, like discourse goes out the window. And with discourse out the window, now you don't have conversation. Without conversation, you just have, one way thinking towards it's my way or the highway. And I think that in a lot of ways in our society right now has become a big issue, where it's like we can't even talk to other people because people have so many beliefs that are fundamental. And once you say, hey, I don't agree with that, then all of a sudden now it's now it's a fight. That's the only thing that exists anymore is a fight. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's good perspective for me, for sure.
But the tribe, Adam, the tribe could start solving a lot of these problems, man. Like
communication in the tribe.
Dude, the
sure.
communication in a tribe. Like, I think the reason why we all think we're like fundamentalists in either side is because that's what online is telling us. Like, dude, it's dividing us more and more and more every day. And I just think more men and more women and more kids need to get back into tribes. Anyways, go ahead. Yeah, Adam, sorry. Didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, yeah, and I want to go back to your point earlier that the problem with fundamentalism, wherever it comes from, whether it's religious or secular or political or cultural or whatever, is that you start with the conclusion in mind. It's like you already have the answer. And so there's no longer any mystery. There's no longer any searching. Now you're just going through whatever, kind of forcing everything to validate the conclusion that you've already come to. And I think that's such a dangerous place to be in general, but especially
so
spiritually.
Dangerous.
It's really dangerous. And that's the problem that I have with the quote unquote religious, is that they already have these answers, and you can't even have a discussion about it anymore because the answer's already there. It's like, well, we already have the answer. And the interesting thing is whatever answers that they have, those answers have been handed to them by some other dude or some other woman. Like someone told them that answer. It's not like God came down from the clouds and said, here's the answer to it. It's they're riding on the coattails of what other people have thought and experienced and expressed. And I just think it's a really like, it's a really dangerous place to be in, to think
Yeah.
like that. And it's also like, it's a really low energy state in my
Yeah,
experience.
extremely low energy. And in some weird way, I think it creates, I don't want to say, I'm not trying to misuse the word community here, but in some weird way, it does create community within that fundamental sect, because now you are agreeing with all the people who agree with you. And now you just have the more backing behind you to say, you see, we're right, because everyone behind me believes all the same things that I believe. But that's just an echo chamber. That's just an echo chamber of everybody who believes the same thing. And then there's no challenging to it. There's no discussion. There's no growth, development. Yeah, it's a really dangerous place to be.
Hmm.
So this is a really important story from the scriptures that illustrates exactly what you're saying. That humans in general are far more interested in being accepted and fitting into community than they are about being honest or accepting what's actually true and not true. We're just wired that way for most of us. We're very tribalistic, and there's a lot of value in being part of a community and having a tribe around you. But if you look at what happened with Christ, something that's really just like this kind of canary in the mine shaft moment for me as I've studied this over the years is you have Christ who comes into Jerusalem, his triumphal entry. This would have been one of the coolest times in history to go back to. Like if I had a time machine, this would be in the top 3 moments. Go back
Where
Yeah.
when Christ
everybody's
is
going
going,
crazy when he comes in. Yeah.
dude, he's going into the epicenter of his enemies, like the
Yeah.
capital of the Pharisees and the political and religious hypocrisy. And the people recognize him as the truth. They see him. They're crying out, "Thou Son of David." They're laying down their palms. They're laying down coats. He rides in on a donkey, and everybody is celebrating. And he goes right into the heart of their pride and flips over tables, and then just starts teaching. And nobody can do anything about it because the people see him and recognize him as the truth, as the Son of God. And so even the Pharisees, they can't do anything. They just have to sit there and listen to his teachings. And then what happens, and this is the part that should be a wake-up call for all of us, myself included, is that he gets taken in the night. Judas betrays him. They take him before the high priest. They interrogate him. They pass him around. He's gone for a few days. When he comes back, Pilate puts him on, he says, "Do you want Barabbas or do you want Jesus? Which one do you want to be released?" And they say, "Crucify Jesus." What's interesting is that how did the people go from saying, "Thou Son of David," and then a few short days later, they're crying out, "Crucify him"? What happened?
Mm.
And I think it's because once Jesus was removed off the scene, the structure, the framework, the community, the tribe all came in and nope, that he's wrong, he's bad. See, you want to fit in. And they started creating this whole this whole thing where people were being shamed if they didn't fit with the narrative of the group think. And so these people that were recognizing the truth one minute, the next minute they're crying out, "Kill him." And I think that's just such a metaphor for life. Like that stands alone as probably the most powerful metaphor that I've ever read. Literal event, but most powerful metaphor I've ever read in my entire life. And something I just think about incessantly is how do we switch like that? How can we see something and see it for what it is and then trade that so that we can fit in and be liked, so we can get in their case, so they could go to the synagogues. And so their families felt comfortable and didn't feel like they were saying something that was radical or inappropriate. They could fit in with their community. And I think that's one thing that all religious people need to be really wary of is, are you pursuing the truth or are you pursuing the community?
That's really interesting. Justin Dodge, we had him on a podcast I did for Customs and Border Protection Special Response Team, and he was a part of this massive, massive Denver Nuggets won the championship, and there was hundreds of thousands of people, and he said that the crowd went from fine to very, very like intense very fast. And it's like the way the crowd starts to act, like he was just explaining in a much more articulate way than I am, that the energy of the crowd can shift very quickly. And it brings to light, in real life, like when you're in these situations, how do you stand firm in your beliefs and not get pulled in by what other people are thinking or other people, but simultaneously be open-minded and listen, right? Of course. And that's why I think having a tribe, like we talked about, whether it's in these workouts or whether it's in what you're doing, having a group of men who could come together with the shared purpose of pulling each other up and let's all get better, then I think you start having really good conversation. And that's where I think the secret is, man. I really feel that way. And I think for kids, and maybe you could speak to this with your fifth coming on the way, like I think sports become that. Like at least for my children, sports have been incredibly impactful for them with the coach obviously sharing insight and then the kids being able, and then you know, for them to be humbled and learn. And I'm curious if like sports are what essentially, what if we kept playing sports as grown adults? Would we solve a lot of the problems that we were having? You know what I mean? Like, think about that.
Yeah,
Huh.
it also highlights the importance of just leadership at every level of the tribe or organization. Leadership's so important. But yeah, Adam, what are your thoughts on this as a father of now going to be 5, right?
Oh, congrats, by
I
the way.
couldn't agree more. Like I get a lot of well, it's a sacred responsibility, but I get a lot of single mothers reaching out to me and they're saying, "Hey, I know I can't do this on my own. I know that I'm not equipped to make a boy into a man." I think I have so much respect for women like that can recognize that and are really concerned about getting their sons, being very intentional about the development of their sons. And that's the first thing I always say to them. I say, get them in sports, get them in martial arts, get them in a tribe of brothers that they're going to learn how to lose. They're going to learn how to win. There's a hierarchy in it. There's a structure. There's a coach in there. They're going to learn how to take orders. They're going to learn how to lead. Like this is one of the last rites of passage that we have in society as sports. And I think we should always be playing. I play pickleball now because my knees are shot. So I play a lot of pickleball and it does solve a lot of problems. You get all different walks of life there. We'll sit there like at the pickleball courts talking about politics and religion, but pickleball is what brought us together. And so we can have these really kind of off the rails conversations. And something about being in that active environment, like where you're kind of already on this tribe of pickleball players, you can talk about and tackle some of these issues without people just getting triggered and like losing their mind if you have a different opinion than them.
Be careful with those Achilles during those pickleball games, though.
Have you done something to your Achilles?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, snapped it like a baseball bat playing pickleball.
Man, I'm sorry.
While I have you here, I like I said, I've really enjoyed your content for a while now. When it comes to your relationship, we talk a lot about relationships here. I met my wife at 14. We've been together since 15, so we've been together a long time. And I think our relationship has obviously evolved over the years. And what are your thoughts on your relationship with your wife, having 4 kids, a 5th on the way? Is there things that is there things that what is your wife providing? How do you create that relationship and how do you allow it to thrive, especially going through a divorce? I think you have a unique perspective here. And my camera went out, but it's fine. And compared to what the tribe provides you, because they provide you 2 very different things. And I think you need. I mean, my wife is my greatest champion. That she's everything. I'm curious your relationship with your wife. What do you learn through your previous divorce, and what are you doing different with your wife and with 4 kids and whatnot that you think other men should be imparted? Like at least you're not trying to be a guru here, just sharing perspective of what you learned.
Man, there's a lot we could go on that. I learned a ton from that. I've mentioned this on some of my reels that I feel like looking back now that my divorce and that first marriage, I have nothing but the deepest gratitude for those experiences because I learned so much and they shaped me. One of the things that I did fundamentally wrong, going back to kind of the earlier points I was making about getting kind of the worst framework from society or family, and it's well intended. I don't think it's, malicious at all. But men were often told to kind of let it roll off our back. Like, there's a lot of justification or validation in society for women when they act poorly. Oh, she's just emotional, or oh, she's just going through something. We rush to the defense of women. But then men are just kind of conditioned to just take it, like to be the emotional punching bag. And that's part of our role in a healthy relationship is the happy wife, happy life. As long as she's happy, then we're all happy. And so for me, when I got in my first marriage, in an effort to try to keep the peace, I started tolerating things, and it started off small, like eye rolls or like some sarcasm in her tone to me that I wasn't doing with her. Like I wasn't doing that back, but it would just start with like little subtle things like that I didn't address in real time because I just wanted to kind of keep the peace and it's not that big of a deal. But the issue, it is a big deal. That's what I would tell guys right out the gates. It's a huge deal. there are 3 poison pills in any relationship, and if you have one of them, it's gonna ruin your relationship. If you have multiple, it's game over. It's apocalyptic, and that's dishonesty, distrust or dishonesty, disrespect, and deflection, the 3 Ds that lead to the 4th D, divorce. If you've got any of those in your relationship, and if they get tolerated, they get normalized. So the more disrespect you put up with, it doesn't make it go away. It just it fosters it to happen again and to get worse. And so that's what happened in our relationship. This is from my perspective, of course, is that I tolerated a lot of little things that grew into bigger things. And then we got down this rabbit hole where it was just, it was so baked into the fabric of that relationship now that it was impossible, at least for me. I didn't have the tools or the ability to try and fix that. And so that's where my first marriage really got off course, is I didn't know how to hold boundaries for myself. I didn't know how to say this is not acceptable and I'll draw a line. And having learned from that, when I got in the relationship with my wife now, one, I picked a totally different type of person. So I recognized like, hey, what was compatible with me and what wasn't. So I was a lot more intentional and careful and aware when I was dating of things that I wasn't aware of the first time when I got married. So I was really, really careful about who I picked. But then, like, with my wife now, and even to this day, it rarely ever happens. But if there's ever anything that I don't feel is okay, like anything that feels like some form of disrespect or distrust or like deflection, not taking accountability, dude, I address it right then and there. Like I talk about it right there. Um, and this is going to sound totally radical, but I think this is important if you want to be in a healthy relationship, is that ultimately you have to be willing to leave that relationship if you want that relationship to be healthy. And I know that's going to sound totally crazy, but if you're not willing to leave that, if there's nothing that person can do to get you to leave the relationship, then you will tolerate and put up with all kinds of nonsense. When I went to marriage, this is the first time I heard anything like this. We went to a marriage counselor, my first marriage, and it was a female marriage counselor. So I thought I was going to go in there and just get my ass kicked. I'm like, whatever we got to do to try and to fix this marriage, I'm here for it. If I got to take my hits on the chin, I'll go there. But it's a female marriage counselor, and so I didn't have any hopes of like, you know, of it being like favorable to me. Um, she separated us after our first session because we couldn't even get through a session together. So she separated us, this female marriage counselor. And then the second session with me the next week, when it was just me and her, she said something to me that I'll always just remember now. She said, I can't help her unless you're willing to leave. That was a marriage counselor. She's like, I can't bring her to the table if there's not real sort of accountability. And ultimately that accountability has to be like, hey, if this gets bad enough, or if these lines get crossed, I'm no longer going to stay in this relationship. Now, of course, I am not advocating for men to bail when it gets hard or to not take on responsibilities. I'm the opposite of that. I believe in marriage. I believe in monogamy. I believe in family. I believe in showing up and doing your best as a man day in, day out, every day. You never quit. You turn up and take care of those who are on your watch. So I'm not advocating like some get out of jail free card when life is happening and it's hard. But I am saying when you get into a relationship with someone, if they start feeling like it's okay to be disrespectful to you, like, how are you ever going to be able to build a healthy relationship on that? If they feel like it's okay to lie to you, and if they lie to you about small things, they'll lie to you about big things. How are you ever going to build a relationship on that? Or if there can't be some accountability, like, hey, we both have a part to play in this. Let's come together and talk about how we can both be better. If it's always just you're the bad guy, you're the reason why this happened, and the other side of that equation can't take accountability, you can never build a relationship on that. And so to me, it's like going into this relationship. I talked with my wife about this. I said, hey, like, I'll take a bullet for you. I will show up every day. I'll be a good husband. I'll be a good father, but I will never let you treat me disrespectfully, ever. And if you do, and if you feel like that's okay, I'm going to leave. And it wasn't like an ultimatum. I wasn't threatening her. I love her. She's the most important person in my life. She's the best human. She's a better human being than me. Like she is amazing. I love this woman with all my heart. But I feel like our relationship is so healthy right now because we both started off with that framework. Like, hey, we're going to show up. And if there ever comes a point where one of us isn't showing up anymore, that's where we have to really look at whether this relationship is going to work or not and start having those conversations.
Well, I like that you said that this doesn't mean that it's not without work. It's almost exactly the opposite of that through the explanation that it takes a tremendous amount of work. And the other thing that I just want to make clear, like this obviously means that these rules work both ways. It's not like a one-way equation where it's only, the man can't tolerate disrespect, deflection, and dishonesty. Like, you have to do that for your partner as well. It's a two-way street. And I think, like, it's obvious, you see a lot of people, and it happens on both sides, stay in relationships because there's a fear of leaving, or a fear of the unknown, and tolerating so much that there's like a complete loss of self, all self-respect, all loss of any sort of thing that you would stand for, to feel proud about yourself, because you've tolerated so much of those 3Ds. And yeah, I like that the way that you frame that. And I just want to make it clear that it's a two-way street on that.
100%. I expect the exact same for my wife, and to have the
For
exact
sure.
same standards for myself. So we have a rule that, like, kind of an unspoken rule that we just operate with, that if either one of us is disrespectful to the other person, it gets addressed immediately, and you say sorry immediately, right? And if you don't, we give ourselves a little bit of space. Like, sometimes you just need some time to calm down, get the emotional edge off of it, and then we come back and we have a healthy conversation. This has probably happened like 3 or 4 times in our marriage. So it is so rare and fairly minor things. But being able to draw those lines early on, accountability saves marriages more than anything else does, more than feelings, more than hopes and dreams, more than anything else. When you can have in a relationship very clear communication with each other, and then have these lines of accountability that you hold with each other. Not that I'm telling her what to do with her life, but I'm telling her what's okay and not okay with me, and vice versa. There's been a couple of times, you're just redlining or whatever from work and whatever else, that I've, like, snapped a little bit at my wife, like 2 or 3 times I can count on one, in our marriage. But I immediately say sorry. Like, I'm like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 I shouldn't have had that tone. I'm so sorry. That won't happen again. That's not I shouldn't have talked to you like that. We're having a conversation. I'm feeling redlined because of this, this, and this. Still wasn't okay. I'm not gonna do that again." Like, that's how you address those things in real time, so they don't get into way bigger problems. Because whatever you sweep under the rug, it's gonna come out the other side a monster. It's gonna come out
Yeah.
way bigger and way harder to deal with than if you're just, like, really on top of it in real time, having these types of conversations. And they're hard because they they can be pretty emotional and they can be pretty volatile, but you need to address those small battles when they come up, rather than, like, you know, ignoring them and then creating this massive war that is gonna turn into what your relationship is, right?
Yeah, I think the 3Ds you talked about, I think in the beginning of a relationship, I can't speak from getting involved in a lot of relationships. That's not something I have a background in, right? But I can imagine that if from the beginning you start off with this groundwork, especially as you get older and you have multiple partners and you get to know what you need, just having the baseline accountability with each other and like having this discussion, I think could just set up the relationship for success. I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it. So yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing it like that. I haven't heard it in that way. So thank you.
Oh, appreciate it. No, I appreciate this opportunity to talk with you guys. I think this is super important, and it's hard to get all of this in a, however long podcast to really do a deep
A
dive. And
real
so,
Oh yeah, or like a 2-minute reel, you know?
yeah,
Um, there's so much, when we, my goal with what we're doing at Train Hard. So we've ran and operated gyms for many years, and we started a company called Train Hard, and the vision of it is to help men, to pull men up, right? And to help them train hard so they can protect, they can provide, they could be the best version of themselves for their community. And I the my we need more of this, right? We need more opportunities for men to connect in the real world, because as the digital world becomes more and more apparent, right? And more in your face, we just got to remind each other, man, to just get together. And I think that podcasts like this, dude, I look at it like, hey, I got an opportunity to talk to Adam. What can I pull from him? How can I learn a little bit more about relationships or this or that, And that's what we want to share here on this show. That's it. That's the goal.
well, that's it, man. That's the tribe life, right? Is we get together, we share what works, what doesn't work, we share our journeys with each other. You have guys that are going to be there for you when you need them. People ask me, how did I get through my divorce? And it was 3 things. Like, and these were foundational for me to come out of my divorce, um, better for having gone through it. And the first is God. The second one is the gym. So I'm glad you guys are bringing that up because that gym was my therapy. Like if I could get myself in the
Let's
gym every
go.
morning,
Yes,
if I
sir.
could, you could lay it all on the table. You really do exercise your demons in the gym. You know, you go run 10 miles on the treadmill and you come off that and you feel completely different than when you started. And then the third was my buddies. Like I just had buddies. Some of them I hadn't seen in a while because I'd been fairly isolated. That's another thing that we do, and I did poorly at in my first marriage. Is there's this sort of sense that your friends are disposable once you get married or once you get a career or whatever. It's like the friends aren't really that important. And I bought into that largely in my first marriage with grave consequences for that. And I realized like when I went through my divorce and buddies of mine just started showing up just to help out, help me move into a new house. Like, hey, dude, I want to take you out to lunch. I know you're going through something. Let's talk. You know, just guys hit me up, totally unsolicited. I'll get emotional about it, man. I'll never I will never ever give up my friends ever again. If a woman had a problem with my friends, fundamentally what she's saying is she has a problem with me because my friends are a reflection of me. They may not be me, but they are a reflection of me. And so if you look at my buddies and you say, I don't want you hanging out with him, I don't like him, da da da, you're really saying that you don't like parts of me. And that's an issue for us to be in a healthy relationship. And so, like, yes, you got to be selective about the friends that you have. There are guys that are
Yeah.
bad influences out there. You have to be selective about that. But when you know you got a good tribe of brothers around you, that's your family. That's the family you got to choose to go through this life with. Those are your brothers, man. Those are the guys that are going to be there when a relationship isn't working out. It's your boys that are going to show up that aren't like, you know, aren't going to get turned off because you're going through hard things. They're going to be there for you. And like, I will never trade that ever again. I would recommend that to everybody. Like, get yourself, every man out there needs to have good friends around him, whatever that takes. And then keep those friends close to you for the rest of your life because those are guys that you're going to lean on a lot of times when you're going through it.
Yeah. Recipe for disaster otherwise. You know,
Man.
without faith, without, you know, physical exertion, without a community of brothers around you, really, really dangerous place to be.
Man, it's so
Yeah,
interesting, Adam. You know,
I
when
was not gonna go to therapy. Again, I don't have anything against therapy. I just didn't wanna do therapy. I didn't feel like I'd seen it work much in the experience I'd had in my first marriage, and I wasn't gonna get on medication. I wasn't gonna take antidepressants. I was going, you know, I was really depressed at the time, and my life was in shambles, but I was like, "I'm not gonna get on pharmaceutical drugs to deal with this. I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna take the hits, and I'm gonna do the best I can with it," and it was those 3 things: God, fitness, and my buddies.
um,
Those are the guys, man.
dude, you know, Adam, you're hitting the nail on the head, and I'd love to. I want to be sensitive of your time, and I want to just say, like, when my daughter was first diagnosed with leukemia, it's interesting because I think back, like, what were the main cornerstones? Obviously, I wanted to educate myself on the illness. Okay, that's fine. That's like over here, but it was faith, right? Because your back's up against the wall. It was faith. It was family. Obviously, like this community around me. It was fitness that got me through it, right? And it was close friendships and close friendships and family. That was it. And you know, life is hard and it's going to have ups and downs. And I think that those three things, if you could anchor in those three things, dude, you could be an unstoppable guy, right? Because you have faith in purpose, you have obviously your family, your brothers, your close friends, and of course, fitness just I think unlocks so much in you that I just feel like if a guy isn't working out, it's like the secret sauce. So dude, I love the way you articulated that, and especially going through your divorce and having a difficult time and having that band of brothers around you. And I think that the work you're doing, the work we're trying to do, we need more and more of it. And I look forward to meeting you and in person, doing something together, man. I want to get guys together. I want to have guys who aren't just like these, hey, I'm the guru guy. It's like, bro, I'm just a dude. I'm just a dude who's had some life experiences. I want to share with you some of these life experiences. And that's what we're looking to do here at Train Hard. And I think you hit the nail on the head with a lot of the stuff you're talking about. So I'd love to get you maybe out in front of with some guys at some point, but I'll reach out and we could talk offline about it.
No, I'd love that, and I'd love for us to get another podcast. Maybe we got a little bit less technical issues because we started a little bit late and kind of threw off a little bit of the mojo with just some curveballs that got thrown my way trying to log on. But I'd love for us to
Jason's camera too, man.
Dude,
how many times how many times are we gonna see that rainbow screen over there, Jay?
My camera,
were you ready to
Adam
bust
was
that
like on
yeah.
his internet was like foggy. We're gonna have to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
But you know what, man? we're
Good
not going to let
conversation.
perfect get in the way of just a damn good time. And we'll have you on again. I mean, shoot, dude, we'll set up another time to record. I want to talk more about kids. I have a lot of other things I want to talk about. Even dive a little bit more into faith, because I like your outlook on a lot of these things. And for people who are like, dude, like, hey, I love what this guy's talking about. Where's the best place to go to learn more about the things you're doing? Is it Instagram? Is it what is it?
Yeah, mostly just social media, Adam Allred Official on all the social media platforms. And then you can go to doughboy.com, DGHBOY, just to check out the community, take a look at it. We've got some really cool stuff there, and we're evolving. So we're learning in real time how to make this better and better and create a better value add for the guys that are part of it. But just a testament to how important this is and how many men lack this right now, and the work that you guys are doing and every other man out there that is gathering guys into tribes, whether that's in literal proximity or virtually, is we started launching this really officially, Doughboy. We kind of sort of launched it 7 months ago. But in the last 4 or 5 weeks, we've started pushing it. Like, we got all the kind of the pieces lined up, and we really started pushing this. And not even very aggressively, just throwing some tagline, hey, if you're looking for a tribe to join at the end of one of the reels I post, come check out Doughboy Nation. And we're up to 140 members right now in just a few weeks with very little marketing at all. And this just shows you how much of a need is out there for guys, that they are on islands. They don't feel like they've got the right strategy for life. They don't feel like they've got good friends around them. They're going through really hard things in their life. And this is just kind of a call out to every man out there to start like speaking up and start connecting with others and start creating tribes, and like, let's build back masculinity, because that's going to be the antidote to, in my opinion, every sort of nonsense that we're seeing in society right now. When men rise up, we remember who we are. We remember how important masculinity is to society, and we start coming together and creating that again, is where we're really going to start moving the needle. It's not going to come from some government, some legislation. It's not going to come from some church. It's going to come from men doing grassroots movements like this, where we get together again and we start leveling up together.
You're speaking my language there, Adam. That's exactly what we're doing, man. So go ahead,
Adam.
MDV.
We also got to get you and Sam Elliott to have a conversation one day. Sam Elliott, the actor who's got that cowboy deep voice.
I love
Man,
Sam
you guys
Elliott.
going? Yeah, what? You stole his voice, bro.
That's a high compliment. I'll take that.
That's
man.
That's probably the highest praise I can give you, man. You got a great voice here, man. You could do some cowboy voiceovers for.
Yeah, I'll take that, man. That's a huge compliment. I appreciate it.
You got a great voice.
Well, gentlemen, I appreciate you both. For everybody checking out the podcast, I appreciate you guys. Make sure to check out all the things in the podcast show notes. We'll go ahead and link everything out there, and keep training hard. See you guys again next week.